Hello and welcome to the Webcast for Saturday, October 4th. I'm South Ops meteorologist Jonathan O'Brien. Visible satellite this morning shows some patches of low clouds along and west of the coastal slopes, but also a lot of areas of clear skies as well, as the lingering marine moisture of the past few days fights against an offshore flow influence that's working to dry the region. Speaking of the offshore flow, a look at current wind observation shows fairly widespread northwest to northeast winds across Southern California, mainly in the usual wind-prone mountains and passes. The wind gust values are shown in red, and there's a fair number of 20 to 35 mile per hour gusts, with some locally stronger. However, humidity remains elevated this morning, and by the time humidity starts to fall this afternoon, these winds will have greatly diminished, preventing any fire weather concerns. Here's a look at rainfall totals over the past 48 hours. For the most part, as expected, this last system brought very light amounts and little to no rainfall across Southern California. But it was a different story across the Sierra region, where we had some very respectable rain totals in the range of half an inch to an inch and a half, and locally higher, along with substantial snowfall above about 8,000 to 9,000 feet. So it is definitely looking and feeling more like winter across the Sierra, with a strong start to the wet season up there. The offshore wind component will help bring a few degrees of warming today, especially west of the coastal slopes, but it's modest warming, and even the warmest valleys of Southern California won't do any better than the low 80s today. So overall, it's going to be a very nice day and a very nice weekend with comfortable temperatures and an air mass that's less sticky and humid than what we've been dealing with of late. We've been in a pretty relentless pattern of cool, trough-dominated weather across California, and that's not going to be changing over the next several days. As one trough departs into the Great Basin today, a broader trough will be setting up shop across the west coast by tomorrow and will stick around well into the upcoming week, keeping this cool pattern going. However, this next round of troughing isn't coming in from over the Pacific. It has more of a continental influence, and as a result, it's going to keep us with a dry forecast over the next several days. We'll see daily cumulus buildups in the mountains and maybe a sprinkle here or there, but overall, expect dry weather at least into the middle of the upcoming week. Nonetheless, the continued troughing pattern will keep us locked in this pattern of below normal temperatures. There will be a slight warming trend over the next few days, but overall not too much change. Here's a look at the numbers by the time we get to Tuesday. Highs in the valleys and high desert will be mainly in the upper 70s to mid 80s, with the low desert around 90 and the lower mountains in the upper 60s to low 70s. And in terms of humidity, it's at least going to be a more typical California air mass as we finally get rid of the unusually high humidity that has plagued us for much of the past month. There won't be any significant dryness by any means, but we'll see minimum humidity fall back into the 20 to 40% range with teens in the deserts. Recoveries will remain fair to good in most cases. And following the locally breezy offshore flow this morning, winds will become mostly light and terrain-driven over the next few days. The forecast becomes less certain by late in the upcoming week, as a building ridge over the desert southwest, a strong trough over the Pacific Northwest, and a developing hurricane over the East Pacific all attempt to interact with one another. The most likely outcome is a little bit of additional warming late in the week as we at least temporarily feel a little more of that ridging influence, but there's a lot of question marks for late in the week that we'll be working to sort out over the next few days. In terms of fuel moistures, while it's not a hot and dry type pattern by any means, steady drying trends are likely in the dead fuels over the next several days, at least enough to back us a little closer to more seasonable levels after the prolonged wet conditions of late. Dead fuel moistures will still generally remain higher than normal, but the drying trend should at least bring about more favorable burning conditions overall. However, the potential for any significant wildfire activity will remain very low due to the recent cool, wet conditions and the lack of any significant fire weather. And as of right now, while there is a lot of uncertainty in the pattern by late in the week and next weekend, one scenario that does not look to be on the table is any sort of significant offshore wind event, likely keeping us in the clear on any significant fire concerns through at least the middle of October. That's it for today's webcast. Thanks for joining us. The next one will be on Sunday, October 5th.